Welcome back. This is part 1, video 4 of my river guide. In this video, we're going to be discussing board selection. So, in the Stone strategy guide, I went through all 6 boards and we talked about how Stone performs on all of the boards. River pretty much likes one specific board, and that is board A. And the main reason is, well, actually, there's 2 reasons, but first, your wetlands touch all land types, and that allows base river to have sacred sites. So if you're not playing travel, if you're playing just base, it allows you to use river's domain and have these sacred sites that can hit your entire board, which is excellent. All of the other boards, there's at least one land that's not adjacent to a wetland, with some having more than others. But the other reason why board A is your best board as river is your starting presence is centralized and the board is very condensed. You can pretty much, with your G2s, you can kind of branch out and hit pretty much any lands that you need to. And you can use your, remember, we talked about in the previous video, you're playing Washaway and River's Bounty. You'll be able to use River's Bounty to create a sacred site pretty much anywhere and be able to use that massive flooding wherever you need to. All of the other boards, there's going to be a land that you can't really access, or it's just going to feel a little bit awkward. So if you're looking for the best results, board A is my board of choice. There is one exception, and that is if you are playing a solo game, in which case I would play for board E. And the reason why board E is excellent in solo is, so one of the benefits to playing solo is there's decreased adjacencies. And that allows you to create these isolation pockets that can prevent builds, explorers, all of that. And board E is amazing for that because, as you can see, once this town is removed here on E7, I don't know why it's not letting me draw on the board. Yeah. Well, once this town is removed on E7, you can see all of these lands here get kind of cut off. This E8 and E6, and this is part of the strategy I'm going to try to hopefully utilize in my England video, because I think that's the only way River has a shot at beating England outside of just high rolling and getting lucky on a good major. But being able to disrupt this building and then cut off lands will greatly help. So I put board E and A tier in the A selection. It's a good board for the reasons I stated. It's just a little awkward if you're trying to reach all of the lands. For instance, after your G2 turn 1, it's somewhat awkward reaching all of the land types. Like you won't be able to access your E3 that easy. You'll have to spend another growth to get into that land. But I mean, it's not bad. Like I'm still pretty happy if I get board E as river. Board D, this is same thing like board E. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. Like if my starting growths are usually going to look like this, or it's going to look like this, and we're just gonna collect your Dahan based on where you need that sacred site. Once again, it's not terrible. It's not as good as S or E, but you'll get by with it. And then lastly, you have your 3 worst boards, B, F, and C. I mean, you're not terrible on these boards. It's just the top boards, just slightly more advantages. You're less likely to get screwed on these top boards. Board B, you're starting with the town land. And also, it's just really awkward to create that sacred site that you want to use massive flooding. Like in previous versions, or in previous boards, right? Like let's say like board E, right? We grow here to E7 and then E5. We then, in the growth phase, we pull these Dahan here. And then with River's Bounty in the slow, we're going to pull the Dahan from E1 to E5 and create a sacred site. And now we can access all of our adjacent lands with our massive flooding. If you look on our B board, we really can't do that. Can't do that well, especially if we want to access our B3 here. There's no way to create a sacred site in range of B3 on turn 1 for massive flooding. And it's actually even worse than that, because if I even want to get in range here, I mean, I guess I can do this. I can do B7, I River's Bounty here from pulling those Dahan in. making the sacred sites. Now I can massive flooding one of these lands such that I can then wash away B3 if I absolutely need to. But I'm not excited if I get board B. Now, it's not like you're going to lose the game because you got board B as river. It's just not favorable. Board F, very similar reason to board B. It's just really awkward to set up to get your Dahan set up for that very first turn. Once again, outside of turn 1, you should be fine in your setup because you'll have so much presence on the board you can kind of make anything happen. But once again, looking at board F, it's like, well, you need to make that sacred site right. You really can't access F3 at all because this lone Dahan. So like you would have to go to like F4 and then F5, and then you'd make your massive flooding sacred site here, which is good. You hit the whole board basically with it. But it's like if wetlands comes up, then you're just sad. And then board C, it's the same thing we've been talking about. Board C3 or land type C3 is really tough to access. Most likely you're going to do something like grow, and then you're going to make your sacred site probably in C5, so you have massive flooding pretty much everywhere. But once again, these 3 bottom boards, there's slight weaknesses in the boards, but you can still make it. You can still make those boards work. So, with that being said, I think that concludes the part 1 series. If there's any additional videos, like if there's any additional content that comes out for River, or if there's any additional cards that come out that influence River, I may make videos regarding that. But otherwise, let's move on to the gameplay videos. See you then.